If you're a student of history, you probably know that ideas come at some point of time, and the practical use may come at a much later point of time. An excellent example of that is Boolean algebra, which was invented at the turn of the century as a pure mathematical exercise by George Boole. Now, Boolean algebra is the basis for pretty much anything and everything we do with computers. The concept of virtualization also had its beginning way back in time. It started with IBM VM370 in the 60s and the early 70s, and the intent in IBM VM370 was to give the illusion to every user on the computer as though the computer is theirs. That was the vision, and it is also a vehicle for binary support for legacy applications that may run on older versions of IBM platforms. And then, of course, we had the microkernels that we have discussed in the earlier course module, which surfaced in the 80s and early 90s. That, in turn, gave way to extensibility of operating systems in the 90s. The Stanford project SimOS in the late 90s laid the basis for the modern resurgence of virtualization technology at the operating system level, and in fact was the basis for VMware. Even the specific ideas we're going to explore in this course module through Xen and VMware are papers that date back to the early 2000s. They were proposed from the point of view of supporting application mobility, server consolidation, co-locating hosting facilities, distributed web services. These were all sort of the candidate applications for which Xen and VMware were positioning this virtualization technology. And now, today, virtualization has taken off like anything. Why the big resurgence today? Well, companies want a share of everybody's pie. One of the things that has become very obvious is the margin for device-making companies in terms of profits is very small, and everybody wants to get into providing services for end users. This was pioneered by IBM, and others are following suit as well. So the attraction with virtualization technology is that companies can now provide resources with complete performance isolation and bill each individual user separately. And companies like Microsoft, Amazon, HP, you name it, everybody is in this game wanting to provide computing facilities through their data centers to a wide diversity of user communities so that it's a win-win situation for both the users that do not want to maintain their own computing infrastructure and constantly upgrading them, and the companies like IBM that has a way of providing these resources on a rental basis, on a utility basis to the user community. You can see the dots connecting up from the extensibility studies of the 90s, like the spin and exokernel, to virtualization today that is providing computational resources much like we depend on utility companies to provide electricity and water. In other words, virtualization technology has made computing very much like the other utilities that we're used to, such as electricity and water and so on. And that's the reason why there is a huge resurgence in the use of virtualization technology in all the data centers across the world.